NASA spent gigantic sums of money during the 1960s, but most of it was spent on the ground, not in space. Huge American corporations, many of which were manufacturing hardware for the military, made gigantic profits designing space vehicles and, more importantly, life-sized models of spaceships, and even huge stage sets resembling the lunar surface. Someone in NASA had realized that after taking billions of dollars from the American people, if they couldn't make it to the moon, they would fake it to the moon.
Obviously, if you're going to somewhere that nobody has been before, you need to have a simulator which recreates that environment as closely as you can. If you're going to the moon, you recreate the surface of the moon. And here we see a section of the lunar surface created. It's about 30 foot high, 30 foot long, 35 foot long. Scale is given by the two people standing in front of it. There were plenty of simulation exercises, but the point is, and should be taken into account in virtually everything that is discussed with the Apollo program, 400,000 people may have worked on the program in total, but none of them had a need to know more than his own job required. The people who were making the rockets didn't know what the people who were making the spacesuits were doing, and because they had no need to know about that. Their job was to make the best models and the best simulation of the lunar surface that they could. And if we come up to this picture here, we see the three scales on which these models were built. We have here the whole moon as one unit. It stands about 20 foot high. We have here behind it a section of the surface of the moon. You'll notice it's curved. And here we have a more detailed section of the lunar surface.
What you're saying is that the images which we're told show a camera pointing out the window of the lunar module as it's coming into land on the moon could well have been filmed previously using these large-scale models.
That's right. It could well be that what we are looking at are films of realistic models. We have no means of knowing if they were actually taken on the lunar surface, or whether what we're watching is part of the simulation exercise and the training exercise. And you'll notice here on these models there is a camera track. A camera starting at this end, coming down here, would approach the moon, or appear to approach the moon, and become ever closer towards it. It's exactly what you would expect to see if you were flying to the moon. This is a simulation rig that was built. This is the command and service module of the Apollo program. And you'll notice that the window here looks out onto a block here. And there's another one here. They're curved. These are the screens onto which the lunar surface was projected as the craft made a simulated approach towards the lunar surface.
Is what we're seeing a mixture of fact and fiction?
It is fact, it is fiction. It's mixed together. It's hard to separate them until you examine it closely. If a spacecraft is in deep space, the only possible explanation for a light seen through the window of the spacecraft is the sun. It's the only bright light in space. If it's not the sun, then it has to be some other artificial light, which implies that that particular image is possibly fiction.
July 1961. NASA was soon being criticized for the flimsy construction of their hardware. The first orbital capsules did not even have windows in them for the astronauts to look out of. One of the most vocal critics was one of NASA's most respected astronauts, an all-American hero named Virgil Gus Grissom, who almost drowned when recovery helicopters were unable to lift his space capsule from the sea. After a successful journey into space, Gus Grissom almost died through NASA's bad planning? Or was this an early attempt to silence Gus Grissom? May 1963. Astronaut Gordon Cooper experiences re-entry problems in his Faith 7 rocket ship.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Roger, have a lift off and the clock is operating. Roger clock. Take my 7, base 7 on the way.
The prototype lunar module, known as the LIM, had serious stability problems. At this stage, there was no guarantee that even if NASA managed to get a spaceship orbiting the moon, they could land safely without killing the crew. Could the footage which we see of the LIM approaching the moon be filmed in a TV studio?
It was filmed in a TV studio. There's absolutely no doubts whatsoever about that. And the way that this film was created was by the use of models. There's nothing secret about the models. They exist. You can go and see them today. The models were very lifelike, very realistic. There is one that is a life-size model. It's in Flagstaff in Arizona. It's 2 miles long, and it's an exact replica of the Sea of Tranquility. The photographs were used to create from those images the replica of the Sea of Tranquility, so that if it was flown over in a helicopter, it would appear as if it was a spacecraft approaching a similar area to land. So yes, all the scenes of the lunar surface were filmed on Earth.
June 1965. Gemini 4 is launched and the first man walks in space.
Flight to Boston started. I can do that. I'm going to drag a little bit, so I don't want to fire the gun yet. Okay, I'm out. Okay, now, hold the brake.
Extensive rehearsals at docking spacecraft were performed in low Earth orbit. Everything was recorded on film. This footage would later become invaluable as NASA sought to fake the success of the Apollo missions. Meanwhile, more problems occurred. On Gemini 9, the second spacewalk had to be cut short due to problems with the astronauts' oxygen supply. On Gemini 11, another attempt to walk in space was curtailed due to fatigue. Was this a sign that cosmic radiation caused nausea and fatigue? NASA could not risk the public humiliation of having brave astronauts crashing to their deaths on the lunar surface broadcast on live TV. NASA's Nazis knew that a major catastrophic failure on the moon would cause the billions of dollars of funding to be immediately cut. Anyone with the most elementary grasp of science could tell that the Saturn V rockets were merely big versions of the Nazis' V-2 killing machines.
The crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. Let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament, the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he sea. And God saw that it was good.
It is wrongly perceived by the mainstream media that there has never been an official report of a UFO by any NASA astronaut. This is simply not so. Since the early experimental orbital craft were developed by ex-Nazi SS officers on behalf of NASA, American astronauts have continually reported strange UFOs. In many cases, photographs and even film was shot of these mysterious, unidentified flying objects. During his pioneering orbital flights in the Gemini 7 capsule, NASA astronaut Jim Lovell clearly alerted Mission Control of a bogey at 10 o'clock high. Capcom at Houston asked James Lovell if he had an actual sighting of a UFO. Lovell answered, "We have several, an actual sighting."
Gemini 7 here, Houston, on your 8. Last clear. 7, go ahead. I told you at 10 o'clock high. This is Houston. Say again, 7. We have a bogey at 10 o'clock high. Roger.
On the 4th of June 1965, astronaut James McDivitt reported seeing a cylindrical-shaped craft. Could this be one of the cigar-shaped motherships which have been filmed from the ground on many occasions, most notably in Russia and California during the 1970s? former astronaut Gordon Cooper has publicly stated that his interest in UFOs was one of the reasons why he became an astronaut in the first place. In 1978, Gordon Cooper attended a meeting of the Special Political Committee at the United Nations General Assembly in order to discuss the UFO phenomenon. In a letter signed by Gordon Cooper, he said, "I believe that these extraterrestrial vehicles and their crews are visiting this planet from other planets. In 1951, I had the opportunity to observe flights of UFOs of different sizes flying in fighter formation from east to west over Europe." In a tape-recorded interview given by Cooper in 1973, he stated, "For many years I have lived with a secret, in a secrecy imposed on all specialists in astronautics. I can now reveal that every day in the USA, our radar instruments capture objects of form and composition unknown to us."
I wonder, did you have anyone call you about a strange plane or airplane or something in the air?
Where?
I was coming down Sampson Drive. I don't know what it was. If it was a flying saucer.
What did it look like, ma'am?
It was like almost like an iridescent color. It was like a bluish purple.
I could see a red glow up in the sky. It was huge.
People are serious. They're very upset.
Whatever it was lit up. I mean, literally, if you were underneath it, you could see it would be like daylight, but red light.
It changes colors from white to red to green. The sucker has not moved.
We have multiple departments right now that have sightings on it. Right.
This is not a prank phone call, I swear you.
How is it?
They're sitting stationary. I got 3 of them.
What do they look like?
I've got 4 discernible colors. I got red, yellow, green, and blue. And the one just was like flashes. So if they're those planets those guys were talking about, then they're planets with Christmas lights on. This is weird.
In 2002, astronaut Scott Carpenter was interviewed by the late Graham Birdsall of the British UFO magazine. Scott Carpenter and his fellow veteran astronaut friend John Glenn both witnessed strange creatures in space during their pioneering flights.
Now, there were so many unknowns in the early days. And this is a fact of the matter. We were really not sure after John flew whether or not there were critters, living critters out there somewhere.
После этого, значит, у нас что-то закрутится, мы все ведем, потом начинаем проверять.
Yes, we have some, not thousands, some cases when Russian astronauts watched objects. Yes. Very, maybe few, not so far from the space station. Mostly over the Earth, very close to Earth, but it doesn't matter. From outer space, you can see it as if it's very, very close to you. And I talked to Musa Manarov and I talked to Gennady Strikalov and the other astronauts, and they told me that they have seen much more cases of UFOs, but without possibility to film it, because he said, it's always like with Russians. When you see something, whether this camera is without battery or with battery lying at the other end of a spacecraft, or, as Musa once told me, I see strange, interesting object, but at the same time a spacecraft is coming to me and I need to dock it, and I can't leave the place and film it. You know, we have been investigating this particular question, and we came to very interesting conclusions. I wouldn't say that millions of people or thousands, no, but there are many people who have not been abducted, because on their level of knowledge and on their level of understanding and abilities, they do not need to abduct people. No. I will try to explain what's going on.
When you say they, you're talking about the...
It is, yes, it is. It is. When it is are flying here, there are some kind of scientific expeditions which are visiting the planet. For us, it was very unusual to find out that the deepest and the most important interest for them is the God. Who is He? They are looking and searching for God, yes, and His creation ways, understand everything. And they can learn it only in one way: if they learn and check how big human groups are behaving, kind of an invisible influence, and how people are reacting. At the same time, there is another very interesting technology. When they meet a person, they take from a person kind of a informational hologram. This hologram, which any human being have, contain in itself information about previous lives, about present life, and something about possible future. They take this hologram, informational hologram, and then to be able to read it, to decode information, they need to have a special key. This special key is the sample of your way of thinking. For this reason, to have this key, they somehow transmit into your brains a hard idea, like, just an example, you are living wrong. You broke our laws on this planet. This is the reason why very soon, when the sky became dark, thousands and thousands of people will die, and only few of them will stay alive. And at this particular moment, when a human being starts to analyze this information, they just read it, like they take it like from a computer. Hops, that's it. They don't need anything. They take this hologram, they take this key, and then keeping this hologram anywhere there, they can have any information about a human being and what's going on with him and his surroundings.